Hello, every pony, and welcome back to Fandom Fridays, where we proceed to check out all the fics that are not pony related. Why? Come on, admit it, guys. You're not here just to listen to me perform a very excellent fireside imitation. Well, have we got a sticker for you today? Yes, that's right. It's our old pal Myken. Yep. You see, he just released a chapter of his magnum opus, Starfleet My Brave Pony, Starfleet is Magic, and I have been waiting so long to do this chapter because it is freaking hilarious, and we got one! Trixie, we got one what? Can you see I'm doing the intro here? Yes, I know. We're all excited to do the intro, but we got one. We got one what? A request. It's request day! It's request day? No. No what? You can't do it. What? We have a talk of our lawyers, and any attempt to even so much as think of singing a Disney song will cause the channel to get flagged and us to burn the fiery hellfires of copyright infringement. What? Yes, so no Frozen songs. Not even a little? No. Not even a little? Nope. Not even a little? Nope. What about Love is a... No. Fine, I won't do any Frozen songs. Not even a little? No. Fine, but still, to the bath holes! Does anybody find it odd that I could say to the bath poles, but I can't sing Disney? Weird, huh? Yes, apparently today we've got a special request from a loyal viewer who decided to give me 3 fanfics that we're going to do today. Yes, sadly they're all really short. And they are both from some of my favorite manga and anime. The first one is Death Note. The second one is, well, I'll tell you about that in a bit. But first, Death Note. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Death Note. Are you surprised? I mean, I love the intricate planning within plans, the twists, the turns the story takes, the really good philosophical discussion of who is right and who is wrong when it comes to things like crime and villainy. Is it okay to push our limits, or should we hold back? I love it. So, let's start off with our first story of this evening, Normal, by Hoshiko. Let us begin, as we here at the Treyberry Memorial Library are proud to present Normal, by Hoshiko. Suspense was heavy in the air. Soshiro Yamaki had deemed to have indefinitely caught his jaw in a tight clench since L began observation of his family. And rightly so. At this point in the investigation, the likelihood that Kira was residing in the Yagami household was probably about 30%, assuming that I actually understand how odds and the like work. L was the same as ever. His inky black eyes unblinkingly watched the wall of screens, and no doubt he was mentally making a detailed record of each movement he observed should it suddenly account for some future detail which would otherwise not fit. His thumb was pressed gently against his lower lip as he noticed some movement on the bottom of the screen. Light had returned home rather quickly from his after-school outing. L had begun to visualize the words suspicious in conjunction with the schoolboy far too often since beginning this observation period. In silence, Sarchiro and L watched as Light made his way up the stairwell and entered his bedroom. After placing his backpack on the floor, Light moved over to the bookcase and pulled out a hollowed-out textbook, which held a surplus of brightly colored magazines. Sarchiro leaned in closer to try and make out what his son was reading, but his movement was rendered useless as L angled the camera with a single bony finger upon the remote on the couch by his side. "What?" Sarchiro uttered in disbelief. His brow scrunched up in confusion and anxiety as he leaned up against his chair. "My son reads dirty magazines? This makes no sense." L nibbled lightly on the tip of his thumb as he inclined his eyes in Sarchiro's direction. "You mustn't be too upset about this. It's quite common in boys his age." Again, I'm just shocked that the guy who plays L also played Kid Icarus. Sergio glanced inquisitively at the detective, who spoke nonchalantly. He obviously knew nothing about having children, and even more obviously, knew less about his son, who would never do such a base thing. With a narrow brow, Sergio felt inclined to give the strange man a piece of his mind on this topic. But to his horror, Ryuzaki had already discontinued his connection to the older man's feelings and was once again nibbling on his thumb while watching over Light's shoulder as he browsed the soft porn. A faint smile could be seen playing on the detective's lips. Sergio huffed at L's response all the more. Yes, L would be the type who would indulge in such practices. He seemed to be inclined towards such things with his appearance and odd mannerisms. In truth, however, L was barely aware of the images being relayed over the live feed. Rather, the incidents of thinking on the habits of teenage boys had inflated a memory in him, which L would forever think with fondness. For the few people that had ever laid eyes on him, L had immediately seemed strange and foreign. But underneath that, he was undeniably human. He too required sustenance and sleep to function. He too knew what it meant to feel amused, elated, or depressed, regardless of whether or not he knew how to show it. And so too was it that L had also engaged in some slightly unorthodox practices during his youth, and from time to time, L didn't seem to mind to indulge himself again. Ah, yes, he was somewhere between being 16 and 17 at the time. Some of the more children in that age by this time had started dating each other, and were discovering the joys of first love. El recalled how puzzling this had seemed for him. His preferred method of learning had long since been thorough observation, so naturally those closest at hand had proved to be interesting subjects for understanding psychological transitions, particularly now, regarding the idea that forming lasting bonds, generally outside the realms of friendship, was a foreign enough concept to the poorly skilled socializer that was young Lala to begin with. The fate of the world will not fall on me making friends. Dang straight! Wanna go read something? Yes, Twilight, let's. What was it that brought these young people together? Elle never really felt drawn to anyone. Well, anyone aside from Quillish. But even that relationship had taken time, and was practiced at a distance to keep Elle comfortable. He couldn't imagine why anyone would enjoy holding hands or, God forbid, kissing. They seemed to Elle a series of unnecessary and quite unhealthy occupations in all honesty. In fact, on more than one occasion, Elle had lectured some of his fellow boarders of the dangers of engaging freely in exchange of saliva, and unwittingly touching another person without being sure firstly that they were in fact sanitary and completely safe to the touch. Such discussions were met with uncomprehending silence, which Elle felt certain indicated a lack of impression with his concerns. After a few of these incidents, Whammy himself had approached Elle to try and dispel some of his concerns. But for the first time in Elle's life, the explanation he received seemed rather incomprehensible. What was slight Quillis had then launched into a more detailed and scientific explanation for the teenager, which was reserved with much greater clarity and satisfaction. Clarity remained. Satisfaction did not. The more Elle thought about the idea that other people felt some deep desire to be in the company of others, the more Elle became worried about himself. According to Whammy, it was very natural to even want to engage in some hideously unsavory acts with these people he felt drawn to. Did this mean Elle was unnatural? He had taken a seat by his computer by this point, and was eagerly chewing his thumb in thought. Would Elle ever be in love with someone? Would he ever be excited by them to the extent he would almost do anything to make them happy and have them by his side? More research was required! With haste, Elle made his way to the orphanage's library. Surely there would be some help books that covered these subjects and would help understand what he was lacking. Walking through the aisles, Elle's eyes scanned the shelves, taking in the titles like they were a passing breeze. General fiction, classics, autobiographies, histories, politics, economics. Ooh! The latest soda jump. Arts and crafts. Cookery. Cookery? Elle stopped. With his shoulders slightly hunched, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, and his body in perpendicular cells, he turned his head gently to the side and looked over the titles again. this time with a considerable measure of curiosity evident in his dark eyes. Spanish cuisine. Soups, salads, curries, casseroles, cakes and biscuits. Butter biscuit. El pivoted on his foot and stared intensely at the shelf before him. He felt his thumb fall into place against his lip, while his right hand stretched out and pressed his fingertips lightly against the outward-facing spines. They were cool to the touch. Luckily, few of the orphans had such interest in things. The books were evidently dated, as one could be seen in slight bubbles on the surface of the laminated covers. His fingers tickled as he hit the bumps. His thumb pressed against the front of his teeth as he noticed one particular tile. French pastries. Without thinking, El's long index finger slid upward along the spine and slid into the groove at the top between the two hardcovers, his fingertip passing into the crypt firmly against the glossy pages. With the slightest bit of pressure, he pushed the book drawn to it so it fell outwards with a light twist as his cover rubbed against the two beside it. El's breath caught in his throat as he clasped the outside of his book. His eyes were resting onto the front cover, which was filled with all manner of brightly iced, glossy sweets, layers of carefully molded cream oozing out from their sides. Some of the treats were barely covered, only a light dusting of sugar clinging to their golden brown layers. Pulling the book out, El brought it swiftly to his chest, pressing against his arms greedily. He turned his head from side to side, checking that no one had observed his actions before sulking away quickly to his bedroom. Fleetingly, he wondered what it was that had originally brought him to the library in the first place, as he passed through the grand oaken doors. But his mind was too preoccupied at the thought of what lay in his grasp for him to dwell on these musings for long. Upon reaching his bedroom, he pushed the door behind him and closed the latch without looking. As though his feet had a mind of their own, he suddenly found himself standing beside his bed, with a book laying on half-made sheets, its cover downwards, hiding the delicious pastries it displayed. His heart was thumping as he reached down and once again felt the laminated cover beneath his grasp. His coolness replaced by a gentle warmth was it transferred from his core to the book on the walk over. El raised his eyes bashfully as he turned the book upwards in his hands without glancing down, as he sat rigidly on the side of the bed, clasping the book furiously. Closing his eyes, El focused on the feel of the cover again, letting his fingers run along the now smooth, now bumpy surface. He had let out a sigh as he opened his eyes once more and took another look at the cover. El always enjoyed desserts. Since childhood, he built up a high dependency on them, consuming more and more in a day than most children did in a week, even making piggy pie bust insane. But he had never seen a book like this before. With a slight hesitance and a growing sense of how awkward the situation was, El tentatively leafed through the first few pages. Introductions and the like were all naturally he saw. Large chunks of text about pastries was equally tantalizing, but could not compare to the marvelous images which he was sure would be contained on the pages to come. Gripping a chunk of pages with a newfound ferocity, El skipped straight to the good bits, and oh, were they good. His jaw hung slack. Eclairs au chocolat, the page read. On the left-hand side under the title sat the list of ingredients and the method, but on the right side there sat the glorious product itself, carefully laid out on a finely detailed china set with gold leaf trimmings, set a long but exquisitely plump eclair. The pastry was the most enthralling side of yellow-brown, and smoother than any El had yet beheld. A thick layer of glistening chocolate adorned the otherwise naked choke shell, and while all this was interesting, what really caught El's attention was the way the cream pastry beneath the scantily clad pastry picked out nightly at him, tempting him with its delightful curves. El felt himself to blush. It's rude to stare, he thought absent-mindedly, bringing his gaze away from the pastry. Of course, El knew that had never stopped him before. In fact, personally, he never understood why it was rude to stare, but he had been told enough that he knew it was a discourteous anyhow. This particular time, that was enough for him to use it as an excuse to draw his suddenly muddled mind off the picture before him. Why would I need an excuse to look away from a picture? Why should I feel embarrassed of enjoying a picture? He wondered, his left thumb risen back to his lip, but this time it was pressing firmly, pushing its way underneath his lip and into the gap between his upper and lower mandible. His eyes came downward again. This time he glazed over the ingredients. 250 grams of butter, 1/2 cup of eggs of plain flour, 6 eggs, 6 cups of sugar. El breathed, feeling his heart bump against his rib cage. His thumb pressed insistently against his teeth until it finally swallowed it in his mouth, his tongue meeting his nail gladly and covering the tip of the thumb in a layer of warm saliva. His dark eyes gleamed as he moved down to the next item. 500 grams of fine quality milk cooking chocolate. El felt the heat in his face intensify, as he pointlessly attempted to hide behind his long, unruly bangs. His eyes continued down the page. The method for making the chocolate pastry. The cream pastillere. The chocolate coating. Martial art for user. Are you okay? El felt an unfamiliar feeling in his stomach as he read that particular part of the process. He had a feeling of fire in his belly. He felt it warm, but also a strange fluttering. He bit his thumb in response to the feeling and continued reading. Place the chocolate and remaining butter in a pan on low heat. His breathing became shallow. It felt like his teeth might break through the skin of his thumb, stirring continuously until melted. Melted. El groaned as he repeated the word. An image of glistening brown half-liquid chocolate being rhythmically stirred in a saucepan over a gentle burn impressed on his brain. Martial art fruit user, I think you're starting to lose it! El startled himself. Oh, good. What was he doing? Why was he feeling this way? Why was he having these uncontrolled responses to food? With a blank expression and an unfathomable sense of guilt, El let the ball fall from his hands and realized what this meant. It was normal. He did understand what love was. He even understood subtly why people would be driven to unsanitary practices for such feelings. But like all things with El, he did it a little differently. He smiled. Yes, it was perfectly normal for boys of Light Yagavi's age to be drawn to such things. Doo-doo. 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 Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Dear whoever requested that, Trixie's going to kill you! Next up on our show, we got 2 fics from a manga that I've been getting way into. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. What can I say? I love it. I love the big, grand expressions that these characters have. The artwork is kind of fun to see, and the stories is actually pretty engaging. Each one that I've read so far has felt different. Whether it's the knight venturing out to defeat a dragon-esque feel of Jonathan's story, the adventure, martial arts tale of Joseph's, or even Jotaro's feeling of the brave heroes wandering off into a long journey, friendships being born. Plenty of character interactions, and the bad guys are awesome. And I just love the feeling of destiny and bonds that the entire story has come up with. So I'm just really glad that these 2 are probably going to be our first appearance for JoJo here. Let's start off with a story featuring Jonathan's Joestar. As we go to archive of our own. Well, I never thought we would come here. Yes, indeed, Trixie. This site is quite interesting. If there only was an easier way to join. Tell Trixie about it. But enjoy as we here in the Treeberry Memorial Library and proud to present Not His World by People. Not a word, Trixie. Not His World by People. There is a hell. Believe me, I've seen it. Jonathan Joestar was going to be an archaeologist. He was never very good at science, except in anatomy. His wife, however, was a doctor. She could read the stories that each person's body told, and she knew exactly what to do to fix them, every time. Ripple healing was an incredible thing, but Jonathan had yet to find a cure for anything as effective as Serena's gentle hands, if you know what I mean. He looked down at his body, at his scars and marks. and wonders what he would be able to tell from them. From his neck below, Jonathan Joestar is not himself anymore. His body is younger than his own. That much he could tell. It's also leaner, though still muscular. However, it looks much more battle-worn than his, and it breaks his heart. Someone younger than him had to go through so many hardships, so many tough battles, he guessed. There are cuts all over the torso, some bigger than others, not a particular deep one at the bottom of their stomach. Even their hands are scarred, burned, marked. None of these injuries cause Jonathan pain, not physically. He stares at the figure lying in bed across the room, the blonde's back turned to him as he reads one of his books. Jonathan wonders just how many of these scars were caused by him. He knows better than to ask for things he does not wish to know the answer for. His new body does not seem to possess the power of the ripple, Jonathan has noticed. He's not sure even if it did. It would not be much help to him, given the sort of monster Dio has turned him into. It would probably only harm him, instead of helping him put an end to the brother he thought he had finished all those decades ago. He doesn't even have the strength to even hope to stand a chance against Dio without the ripple either, since he refuses to feed. Dio has a stand now. That's what he calls it. Jonathan is clearly able to see it, though that seems to not have a given, since the other man had seemed surprised the first time Jonathan had asked him what it was. Stands have unique abilities, as Dio explained to him. His, the world, can stop time, or so he claims. Jonathan finds it hard to believe, since he only has Dio's words to go by. The one time Dio stopped time in his presence, Jonathan didn't feel or see anything. He could move around normally, and Dio looked very alarmed to this fact. So, the body still remembers how to move in frozen time, he had whispered. And the subject of Dio's stand was never brought up again. If there had been someone else in the mansion at the time, then Jonathan would have been sure. He would have been able to see if they could move just as he could, or if they had indeed remained frozen in time, as Dio had claimed everyone and everything did. But Dio's mansion is an empty, cold, and dark place. Jonathan has lost count how many days, weeks, months, years he had been stuck here. Just him and his wicked brother, since his awakening. He has walked around the other divisions a couple of times, and it did seem like other people used to live here at some point. One big room at the top floor had a table full of model ships. Dio has very peculiar and very valued hobbies, but Jonathan has never seen him express any interest in those sort of things. He concluded then that those belonged to someone else. On another occasion, he had been to a smaller room, off to the corner of the mansion. There was a breach in the wall, an open cabinet next to it, and a couple of dolls spread across the floor. Like the other room, this looked like it had been occupied recently, and someone left in a hurry. On the bottom floor, there was a big living room. That's the part that Jonathan loves the most. Its mood is even darker than any place inside the four walls he is now confined to. There are holes on the ceiling, on the floor, and on the walls. Perfectly shaped circles, varying in size. There's also dark red smudges all over the place. Blood-stained curtains. Sand that seems oddly out of place. It reeks of death, pain, and despair. Jonathan dares not come back to it, not even once. Since the first time he ended up exploring the mansion, all the way to that room. Lost in his thoughts, Jonathan seemed to have missed Dio leave, for he's not in the bedroom anymore. Probably went hunting, Jonathan guesses, with a shudder. He gets up from the chair and walks to the other side of the room, where Dio's mirror stands. The blond man spends an awfully large amount of time in front of it, Jonathan reckons. Dio always runs his fingers through the back of his neck, resting on top of his birthmark. His birthmark. It teases Jonathan about how fitting to him the body is. Fits like a glove, Jojo. I'd go as far to spit, and would probably even reject you now. Jonathan hates the sight in front of him. Hates the reflection in the mirror. How his body's not his. How someone else, someone way too young, 18 or 19 years old he guesses, though he was never good at guessing ages, had her life cut short, body stolen, so he could be brought back to a life he didn't even want to return to. His body, now belonging to Dio, hunts, hurts, and kills. Just the thought of it sickens Jonathan. He's out there, hiding in the shadows, raking in the night, and his hands, Jonathan's hands, are probably stained with blood by now. Some innocent lice and blood. Jonathan brings his hand back to his neck, a gesture he had seen Dio repeat a number of times. He knows it's not there anymore. The birthmark he inherited from his father, who in turn inherited from his mother. He knows he's not a Joestar anymore. He's not even human anymore. Not even a man. Not even a person. Under his palm, he can almost see the tips of the star-shaped mark on his skin. He knows it's his mind playing tricks on him, just as it has so many times before. When he woke up next to Marina, only to find out it was his imagination. When he heard Speedwagon call his name, his tearful voice, and turned around to find an empty chair. When he swore he felt a hand on his shoulder, felt a familiar voice whispering, "I'm proud of you," next to his ear, thick Italian accent, even though he was alone. He knows how this will go as well. Once he lifts his hand, the birthmark won't be there. Just a scar on his neck. A wound would be too fresh. Slow to heal without his human blood to speed up the process. A reminder that he does not belong. That he does not have the right to live in his person's stead. He takes his hand away from and walks away from the mirror. It's useless to hope to wake up from this nightmare, as Dio reminded him time and time again. He makes his way to Dio's bed. Perhaps he'll be able to sleep this time. Maybe he won't wake up this time and... No. He stops, looking at the mirror behind him. No, it can't be! Surely, it isn't exactly the same as his. A little paler, but the shape is unmistakable. He wasn't imagining it after all. It had been there the whole time. He wished he hadn't seen it. He wished he wouldn't know exactly what it means. Frozen in time, Jonathan Joestar stares at the horrified star-shaped birthmark at the back of his neck. You bastard, you killed Jotaro! Next we have... She'll be coming around the mountain, she'll be coming... Next we have... Air by... Hoshi... Oh, hi again! Didn't see you for about 15 minutes. Please see you again. Air by Hoshiko. Let's enjoy as we check out what Joseph's doing today. Air by Hoshiko. Air. He needed air. Joesph sat up in bed, one hand instinctually moving to the breathing mask that restricted the flow of air to his lungs. With frantic fingers and a heaving chest, he pulled in vain at the mask, his chest constricting as his breath continued to catch at his throat, worsening the situation. Oxygen starved, his blind panic was only capable of registering one thought. Namely, I have to get this damn thing off my face! This didn't happen every morning, but when it happened, he could generally manage to calm himself, and if that didn't work, Caesar would help him with minimal complaints. However, this morning he wasn't managing too well, and from the lack of Caesar he guessed he was alone. He was beginning to feel rather lightheaded at this point. In an effort to conserve energy, his body gave up clawing at the mask, and allowed his arms to fall to his bed. His eyes blinked heavily. Light panic of his inability to breathe was quickly subsiding to a system shut down. Wasn't this mask supposed to extend my life? He must have passed out after that, because he's certain there was some sort of gap in his memory. But he suddenly found his head resting on something soft and warm, the gentle scent of roses making him smile groggily. As Joseph's senses quickly returned, he recognized the soft cooing of Susie Q, who, at this moment, was holding his head against her chest as she rubbed a wide circle on his back rhythmically. Joesph was certainly not the kind of boy who could be called a gentleman. Since coming to the island, he had almost used every opportunity he had to make some kind of attempt at flirting with Lisa's pretty housemaid. And while he couldn't exactly call the outcome of said flirting a success, Susie's stifled giggles and occasional blushes indicated it also hadn't been a failure. In most situations faced with the opposite sex, Joesph was, as he always had been, a lout. But my lout! But Grandma Irina's efforts to raise him to be some kind of respectable member of society came to the forefront at rare instances such as this. Faced with the softness of Susie's chest, although hidden beneath the print of her cotton dress, Joesph felt it was inappropriate to linger any more without expressing invitation. Clumsy as ever, he pulled away rather hastily, his face slightly flushed and his heart rate increasing speedily. Susie! Thank you. I'm fine now. He grinned broadly and rubbed the back of his head, and attempted to draw her attention away from his heated face. Susie was still looking slightly shocked at his sudden movement, when suddenly her features crinkled cutely, and she gave way to a small bit of girl's laughter.
Jojo, you're blushing.
Susie bit her lip as she drew her hand away from his toned back that was covered only by a light singlet. Joesph blushed only intensified as the insinuation, despite his immediate "No, I'm not!" However, it only took him a few seconds to fall back into his usual banter. Anyway, if I was, would you blame me? He questioned with a smirk. It's not every day a man wakes up to a beautiful girl like yourself. Although, personally, I wouldn't mind happening again. Susie stared down for a moment with a slight smirk of her own. You wish. She teased with a slight toss of her head. Her nose pointed up in defiance at suggestion. But Joesph noted the way her eyes opened quickly to glance from the side, filled with her usual optimism and cheeriness, but also a playful curiosity. It's a cool thing I have this mask on, he mused aloud, while he ran one hand carefully through his messy hair.
Oh.
Joesph leaned slightly against her, his eyes bespeaking his endless playfulness that would forever be a part of him. Otherwise, I would have kissed you by now. Susie giggled, openly in his face, calming herself after a moment or two, but put on a careless air and twisted her index finger into a strand of blonde hair as contemplating.
You know, Jojo, I often wonder what you would look like without that mask. It's a bit of a shame you have to wear it. I bet you're cute under there.
Her cheeks flushed a light pink, as she squinted faintly at him, as she finished her sentence with a small poke of her tongue. Joesph felt his heart race, and increased all the more as she spoke. She was terribly pretty before, but when she blushed, Susie exuded a sweet naivete that was nearly irresistible. Aided not by her teasing, Joesph leaned towards Susie, allowed herself to rest more comfortably on her arm, which was pressing into his mattress. The closer they drew to each other, the more intense the pink of Susie's cheeks grew, finally settling mere inches between themselves. Her eyeglasses hung heavily over her sparkling blue eyes, mesmerizing Joesph, who idly licked his lips beneath that darned mask. Aww, I really am hoping for these two to get together.
Yeah, so am I, actually.
I know, Jotaro. I'm kind of hoping that these two wind up getting married and have a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Telling, so am I. His breath getting deeper, his chest constricting again for another reason entirely. Joesph once again, for this morning, cursed his breathing contraction. Once it's off, I swear, you'll be the first to know just how cute I can be, he said lonely, a force nearest to both him and drawing Susie's soft red lips towards his mask, despite the futility of the action.
I'll be the point of that,
Susie remarked slightly, breathlessly. It was pointless, but Joesph couldn't help closing his eyes as the mask gently brushed against Susie's nose, making her sigh cutely. Hey! The door to the room suddenly opened as Caesar stepped in. Susie and Joesph turned their heads rapidly, staring at him wide-eyed, both of them looking as though they had emerged from a dream, their faces slightly flushed and dazed. Caesar smirked and placed his hands cockily on his hips. I see. He chuckled briefly to himself as he saw the filthy look Joesph throw at him. Come on, Joesph. Playtime's over. Lisa wanted you downstairs half an hour ago. The end. Well, these three were pretty amazing, hilariously heartwarming, and kind of scary. You know? That's the show in a nutshell, really. We get some heartwarming stories, some scary stories, and some genuinely funny ones. Gee, all that I needed was a fourth one to be horrible, and we would have the trifecta of what you experience from the show. But I think this also shows us what you can do with a good fanfic. Let's start our review off with normal. God, I love it. I love how, like, approaches this from a very, very scientific angle. Elle points out that, hey, it's perfectly normal, and then starts exploring how normal it is. However, as the story said, he approaches this normalcy different than the way you and I would approach it. Most of us use normal magazines. He decides to go for his his dessert fetish. And I just loved how it showed off just where his mind could go. How he would handle this type of scenario. And for the love of me, I love it so. It was so L. And that's what I love about him. When it comes to his character, he's just so down to earth and bemusingly quirky. It's utterly hilarious to see. And you can't help but love some of his amusing quirks, even when he goes a-holeless. On the second story, Not His World. Ooh, that was a very good twist. I kind of started guessing when Dio started talking about how his stand didn't really affect Jonathan, but then pointing out that, oh yes, Jotaro was the body. The beautiful twist at the end was so nicely developed that it just breaks it up. Though, my question for the story is, why did Dio, who hates Jonathan's guts, decide to bring him back? Maybe in this way, Dio wanted more control over him. Wanted to show that, yes, he still had full control over Jonathan. To make this his final victory. And what's worse, use Jotaro's body to do it. This feels like a bad alternate end that you would get at the end of the game. You know, if you do something wrong or lose to Dio, you would see this end screen. Ending unlocked, Not His World. And then we get to this. I gotta admit, I do love the romances for some of the characters when it comes to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Yeah. I know. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is not really a romantic anime. I mean, let's be frank here. We're not expecting Yusaki and Mamo-chan levels of I love you or distant romance. We're not even expecting Goku and Chi-Chi levels of romance. But what we're getting is sort of down to earth, relatable, just kind of there romance. It's developed enough that you actually appreciate it. Or it's giving you something to just go, "Aw, how sweet." And then move on to the next plot. Kind of like Jonathan's and Arena's love. I love them because it's like a knight and a princess type of thing. I won't be able to really tell you much about how I feel about Joseph's and Susie's until I actually watch it. But most of the time, they're just happy little fun little relationships. Not really important to the plot, not really developed. But, hey, that's what fanfic's for. Fanfic can give you a chance to develop or see more of those relationships you've fallen for so much. And that's what the story does. Well, that's one down. That's more to go. I'll see you all next time. Next time, Mikan. Beware. We're about to go to places you don't want me to go to.